Welcome to episode number 65 of the Roundtable. I'm Grant Brisbee, here with Andy McCullough and Marc Carig. Andy, let's start with you. There are two things that give Andy the ass, and the ass is baseballese for just being unreasonably angry and irritable. One is technology that doesn't work right, and the other is his cat. Right now, Andy has some serious technological issues with his computer and a cat that just jumped on his lap. Nothing like, and the worst part about it is that when Andy has the ass, I think it's the funniest thing. I think it's like Airplane, Naked Gun, like Andy having the ass. Like those are like three pillars of comedy for me. How are you doing, Andy?
I'm okay, Grant. I'm trying to somehow meditate while doing a podcast, I guess. So I may just sort of switch off to the Headspace app like midway through this while, Mark is talking about some bullshit that happened in 2016 that he remembers, and you're making some, reference to the meat puppets to explain a game you didn't watch. Like, yeah, I'm really excited. This is my cat Harry for the people who are watching on YouTube. Harry is an exceedingly bad boy. He decided to clock in at the Being Bad Factory right as we were recording, and so he's got to get his shift in, and so he'll be here for a while.
Morning,
How are you
Sam.
guys?
Morning, Ralph. I'm well. Mark, how you doing?
Tell us about your animal, Grant.
Oh, this is Piper. This is every time I use my podcast voice,
Hi, Piper.
Oh,
Piper hops on my lap. So like, I have a
oh
normal
my
voice,
God.
and then it's well, I'm doing a podcast, and she comes and hops on my like won't have it any other way. So every time I do an episode, this dog's on my lap.
I want to dog nap her.
Yeah, no, she's cute. She's cool.
Oh
She's
my
cool.
God. More of,
What's
killing
up,
me.
Pipe? What's up, Pipes?
I want one.
Yeah.
Mark, I'll give you my cat. I'll drive
No,
this
that's a
cat
hard pass.
to
That's a
New
hard
Jersey.
pass. That's the last thing I need in this house is more of that energy. All right. I got a 5-year-old who bounces like off the walls. I got a almost 2-year-old who is trending that direction. We really do not need to be adding Harry to that cauldron right now. That would be a bad move. Bad move.
Yeah,
All right.
say hello to the podcasters. All right.
Don't do your cat dad voice on the pod.
Sorry. Oh,
That's stuff,
sorry. Yeah.
That's stuff that you don't say out loud. Kind of like when you think you should get pulled from a game. Segue into George Kirby. Was that silky smooth?
Dude,
We're going to talk
that's
George Kirby.
That
That
is
was
so
like George
professional.
Gervin, the Iceman.
Right. That was smooth. Yeah, man.
So in
That
our
was like
Slack,
George Gershwin.
Anyway, I did buy a Space Age George Gershwin album guitars this weekend. Anyways, no, sorry. All right, back. George Kirby, you guys were arguing in Slack before this episode. I believe Mark was doing a bit, and it was giving Andy the ass, which happens a lot.
I couldn't tell if he was doing. Were you doing a bit? Okay, good.
He's nodding yes.
That would have sent me.
The total
That
bit.
really would have sent me.
Oh my
That
God.
really-
I just wanted
really-
to see how you'd react, and I did it over Slack because you can't pick up any tone.
Yeah.
Well,
So,
yeah.
You know, I
Because
just wanted to see
if
what
you
would
wanna-
happen.
So explain the argument explain what you were suggesting, because this is an argument I've seen people make.
But first,
actually, explain, context, all that. Yeah.
So George Kirby gave up some runs in the 6th inning, the 7th inning, deep into the game, and then in the post game said, "You know what? I didn't really want to be back out there as at X number of pitches," which probably shouldn't say out loud. Like even if you're thinking it, you probably shouldn't. Just squash that and maybe whisper it to someone on the side later. So that's the context. So Mark, take it away with how you were giving Andy the ass.
Well, I just basically took that and trolled Andy as best I could. I the whole thing about George Kirby saying this thing out loud is that it offends baseball people on like 158 different levels.
Yeah.
Right. And so in my Slack messages to Andy, I was trying to pretty much hit on all 158. Everything from, the lack of toughness that displayed to, what you're telling your teammates when you say that kind of stuff, to, leaving yourself open and being questioned as far as your competitiveness. But I was taking the opposite side of it to Andy. I was basically thinking it's about time somebody had the courage to say this, because how many pitchers have we lost because they couldn't stand up and tell their manager that 7 innings is enough? That once we get to 90 pitches, what is the point here? Okay. That how many UCLs did we lose needlessly? For what? Toughness, competitiveness.
You do that so well.
Is that what we did? Is that what we sacrificed all these elbows? For what? For what? It's useless. It's about damn time. George Kirby is a hero.
Poor George.
Anyway, this was
Poor
the stuff I was
George,
saying
man.
in Slack. And of course, like Andy's like, is this a bit? I didn't answer because it was too damn funny. I was laughing so loud. My wife came in holding my son going, is everything okay? On the other side of the house, I was laughing so hard she had to come check on me. Anyway, that was it. To fill in the roundtable heads. That's how we got Andy all worked up last night. I guess it spilled over into today.
So what are your honest feelings about George Kirby now? Bit off, mask off.
It's about time somebody spoke up. No, I'm just it's just too easy. Like, no, man, like I am all for that thought, actually. Like, I think you know, asking the question, if you're the person being directly impacted by it, you know, you should do that as a player. You should. I don't know if the post-game presser after that is the right place to be saying that. I don't think that's the right. And it's also, I look at it like, man, what are you telling your teammates, man? Like, that's not, it's a terrible look. So like it kills me to see, like, to take the side of like the old school baseball people that's have spent like, you know, 48 hours dunking on this poor kid for saying something stupid. Okay?
Yeah.
But in this case, it's like, yeah, man, that's probably not something you should be sharing in that forum. If you want to have a conversation with your manager, go do that. There's just 100 million of these conversations that nobody knows is going on. Fine. Go to the manager's office, say something, tell your pitching coach, whatever. But to do it publicly like that, not a great look.
I don't know. I mean, obviously, right, it's quote unquote a bad look, right? Like, you know, at face. But even if he has that conversation with his manager, right? You think the clubhouse doesn't know about it? You think his teammates aren't aware? You know,
no, you're right.
About
you're
it.
right.
So it's
you're
sort
right.
of like, look, if you're gonna feel a couple things. One, it would take a lot for me to ever like publicly question a player's like toughness or whatever. And George Kirby does not deserve that sort of, you know, it's incredibly hard physically, mentally, all that stuff to do what these guys do. And so I wouldn't suggest it's a lack of toughness. I think it suggests, you know, a generational gap in how players are raised within the sport. Right, you're talking about a group of guys. You know, George Kirby, you know, came through the college system, I believe. You know, there's a generation of pitchers, right, who have been, you know, trained for a different thing than the generation before them. You know, like Justin Verlander and George Kirby were not brought up the same in the sport, and so, you know, it's understandable, you know, if they might view 90 pitches somewhat differently. Although, you know, Verlander kind of is more modern and a lot, you know what I mean? Like, I mean, Kershaw's not going on 150 pitches either. No one is at this point. So I think it sort of demonstrates just you know, you can describe it as a lowering expectations and increasing of optimization, you know, all that stuff. I mean, it was one of those quotes where you see it and you're like, oh man, that poor kid, that's not going to play well. And like, to his credit, he came out the next day, owned it, you know, apologized. I don't even know if you necessarily need to apologize to like the public. You know, you need to just make sure it's okay with your team. But like, I don't even know. A lot of people, you know, it probably affects people who never heard of this young man before the other day probably have an opinion of him. I don't think it really changes what anyone thinks in the industry about him per se, because this is what pitchers are trained to do now.
Mm-hmm.
You know? And like, I think that something has been lost in that. I think that, you know, the game is in in a less interesting place because of that. But that's just, I mean, this is just a symptom of how players are brought up. And like, so I don't begrudge the kid for, I keep saying kid, he's a 25-year-old man, you know, this fellow for, you know, saying the quiet part loud. He's not the first pitcher who's ever been left in a game and thought like, what the heck, get me out of here. I mean, you know, poor Pedro Martinez has basically did that in a playoff game, you know, like it's a common feeling for pitchers to have. So in some ways, I almost like want to go horseshoe theory and be like, good for this guy for just saying what was on his mind. You know, like I don't know. It's such a bad look, but you're kind of just like, what else is there to say besides woof?
Did my argument start to sway you if you're going horseshoe theory? Like,
well, I mean, my point is the game is worse because of this.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it's not his fault.
No, and like, look, let me be clear. We're joking around earlier, man. I do not question this guy's toughness. I think it takes a lot.
I thought that's what you did
for me
though,
to do that.
didn't
No,
you?
I just stop it. No, but
didn't you say he needed to eat less
stop.
too? He had
Oh
weight issues.
Here we go.
And he's kind of,
I did not. No,
had some.
Not.
Yeah, I thought that's what you said.
No,
The
this
text
is not a
you
Chaz
said,
McCormick discussion. So.
The text you said, I got a text from Mark that says big boy pants. Like that's the term he used when he texted me. He said he needed to put on his.
I said that?
Yeah, it's on my phone right here. See?
Oh my God. So old school. No, this guy, you're right, Andy. The question of the guy's toughness and all that is a bit ridiculous.
Like,
I think I'm more fascinated by the fact that like he pretty much violated every taboo.
Right.
I mean, like he really did. Like, and
he's hit them all, man.
He really went across the bingo, Yahtzee, whatever you want to call it. Check, all of it. So, and that's rare. Actually, it's super rare that happens in this very forward way. And so I guess what I'm saying is, some of those taboos are dumb. They're outdated. All right. Like they don't hold relevance anymore. I think some of it is just like, people's response to it is habit. It's what we've been fed. If you watch sports, play sports, if sports are a part of your life, he like literally just challenged every single one of them. It seemed like, so he did everything except for say, you know what, man, I played this game for fun. It was like, I'd like to win or lose. We just want to have fun. Like, that's the only thing he left unchecked was that the results don't matter.
He flopped the nut straight of taboos. Would you say, Andy?
It was more like a straight flush of taboo. I mean, part of it was that he said I already threw 90 pitches. If it had been 110, there's something about. You're just like, dude, how many times, have you talked to a pitcher over the years where they'd be like, dude, that last inning, I was toast. Like I had, but it's just, they're like, don't write that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you brought up Justin Verlander earlier. When do you think how old do you think he was the first time he heard third time through the order? Like, the first time he heard that, like as a point of concern, 30s probably.
It was the sort of, I can probably apply it to someone who have, to Kershaw, because I actually, kind of have some understanding of this. I mean, it was the sort of thing that like in 2013, 2014, like when the Dodgers talked about third time through the order with Clayton Kershaw, they'd be like, well, that doesn't matter for him. Like that was the only context in which it was used, in which like it does not affect him. And there wasn't a discussion of like, hey, you're coming third time through the order. We might want to get you out for several years beyond that. You're talking like, 10 years into his career.
How old do you think George Kirby was when he heard it?
Right.
You know what I mean?
12. Yeah, exactly.
It's just it's a part, it's ingrained, and you're thinking, well, the kids these days aren't tough. No one's expecting them to throw 150 pitches. Right. It doesn't happen anymore. Right. Levon Hernandez is not walking through that door, and so I don't blame him. You just don't say it. You just don't say it. I bet you there's 100 silent George Kirbys out there, but there's one George Kirby who said it. And that's the only reason we're talking about it. And it's not a toughness thing. It's just a decorum thing. And this is why you get 100 different post-game quotes of, well, give 110%, get back on the horse.
Yeah.
It is what it is. That's why you get this, because it's not good for us as consumers of post-game chatter or writers of post-game chatter, but it's good for the player because they're not out there going like, yeah, this manager kind of showed my whole ass and I don't like it. That's a great quote, but you don't say it.
Well, yeah, that's, this whole thing is red meat for the people who are just laying in wait to bitch and moan about those damn kids and their rap music and their Jordans and playing their TVs and phones too loud and, uncut lawns. Like, it's the kids these days, those little fuckers. Like, it's all these people that wait for that teenager to screw up. And they all come out, and then it's a slam dunk contest, and that's what this is, And I think you get lost in that noise, because really, what are we talking about? It really is just a generational thing. There's a young player who is, as to Grant's points, which are really good. This is how they were raised, man, and things change. It's just what it is.
And sorry, go Grant. I have a generational point, but go for it.
Yeah, this is just a real quick point. Of the major North American sports, there's one where the postseason, where the playoffs are festooned with ads for boner pills, and it's baseball. And there's a reason for that. And it's because there are more of those people, more older demographics, and they're just waiting in the weed to come out in a time like this.
Yeah, and everyone wants to blame the millennials. They want to blame Gen Z for all this. And you know whose fault it is? It's your fault. It's you two from Gen X, because you're the ages of
I'm
the
a millennial,
executives.
But okay.
The executives.
Okay. I'm not a Gen X.
Gen X are the ones who did this.
I do not relate to that. Nope, sorry. That's Grant
it's them.
Brisbee's.
They're the ones who changed it. It's not the players who changed. It's the people teaching the game who changed.
Nice work, Grant.
You identify as a millennial, Mark?
Much more than whatever you are.
You are. Come on, Mark.
What? I hold a steady job.
You two are
and I don't pretend that I hate it all the time. No,
so
don't give me this shit. You're gonna start to piss me off. Stop it. Stop. I own my house. I pay taxes. So what are you,
part of the baby boomer? Yeah, so you're a boomer then.
Fine, I guess. Closer to that than whatever Grant is.
What do you, whatever Grant? I'm right in the border of Gen X millennial, but I'm on the Gen X side.
I'm on the border on the millennial side.
Obviously Gen X. You're both obviously Gen
Oh
X.
my God. These freaking kids these days, Grant. Listen to this shit.
You know what? I don't even care. I don't even care about this stuff, man.
See, that's not me.
Whatever,
that's
man.
That's the Gen Xers, dude, right there.
I don't care. Label me what you want. Label me what you want, man. Yeah. That's on you. That's your hang up, bro.
Where's your guitar? Where's your hacky sack?
Right. Yeah.
See, don't you? I'm not that. Yeah.
Wow,
boy. It is.
Yeah.
There it is.
Wow. My guitar is within reaching distance at all times.
But blame the executives. You're right. As the only pro labor podcast in baseball, that's obviously the executives' fault. So they ruin baseball.
Yeah, it's not like the athletes playing the sport are less, physically equipped or have less mental fortitude. They're just trained differently. They're not trained to play the game the way, and I think there's been something lost with that. I think that you have lost something, that no pitchers are taught to aspire to finish games.
Right, but I think
that's the way of the world now. You know what I mean?
Well, there's another
the way of baseball, I should say.
There's another half of that equation, though. I think if we look at it only, and I agree with you, by the way. Let me say that. I think what you guys are saying, all the bullshit aside, is spot on. But I think the side that's missing is, and this is what I think a lot of people miss. We talk about the sport as if it's not dynamic, as if the game they played in 1995 is the same game they're playing now. Who was throwing 103 in 1995?
Yeah.
The game is different. And I think that is what's missing, is that they have sold out for velo. They have sold out for missing bats. This is the price you pay for it. There's an aesthetic price that you pay for it. There's sort of a cultural price that you pay for, because that's what some of this is that these things that we idealize in the sport, no longer align with what we're asking the players to do. So, and George Kirby's not the best example for this because he's not the first guy I think of like the fire breathing, miss every bat they can guy. That's not who I think of.
Right.
But like, he's a product of a system that is just trying to produce those people. And so that is different from what this sport has ever been until this era. Therefore, any comparisons to what came before it, I think, are woefully inaccurate or in bad faith. What they're being asked to do is completely different. Ergo, how they're going to train to do it is going to be completely different. And obviously that does not match up with the cultural side of the game, which obviously doesn't change very much. It's sort of one of the charms of baseball is that what we see is like that, I guess for lack of a better word, toughness, competitiveness, or whatever, is usually looked about the same throughout the sport's history. Now it's different because this is so fundamentally different.
There's two things can be true at the same time. One is that it works. If you're going to build a phalanx of guys who can throw 95 to 100 and you can slot them in and you've got 13 pitcher slots now, it works. It works. It's effective. However, at the same time, something else can be true where it's kind of boring or it's not as cool as it used to be. It's aesthetically, you don't have that gunslinger walk into the mound and you're going to get 8-9 innings and you're going to have to pull his carcass off the mound. And, you miss that. You miss that a little bit. I don't play baseball. You might be shocked to learn, but I do play this nerdy video game called Slay the Spire. And it's like a card game, a deck building game. And there are ways to just like really just think about a decision for an hour. And there are YouTubers who do that. They'll hem and haw, and it's the way to play the game better, but it's boring as shit to watch. And so when I'm playing, I'm just letting it fly. And that to me is more fun. I don't know how this relates to baseball, but I had to get that off my chest.
Okay. So game 7 of the 1964 World Series, right? Bob Gibson is starting for the Cardinals. He pitches into the 9th inning. They're leading 7-3. Second at bat of the 9th inning, he gives up a home run. 4th at bat of the 9th inning, he gives up another home run. He finishes the game. And I remember reading that like in David Halberstam's October 64, maybe like 10 years ago. And even then I was like, why is he still in the game? Oh my gosh. Like, are the Cardinals going to lose? And it's just, we've been trained to, like that's like, I want the the two gunslingers, going to battle on short rest. But like even Roger Clemens and Curt Schilling in game 7 in 2001, they both came out after 7 innings. Like the game has changed. And I do think there has been something lost, that the pitchers are not, that they're taught to go for velo. They're taught to, try and miss bats rather than collect outs, all that sort of stuff. But I don't know.
Well, here's the other.
Sorry. We've been potting for 20 minutes. I'm about tapped. So
well, let's just switch it to.
Oh, that was funny. No, it was a joke.
I missed it. Say it again.
My podcast.
Go.
Ready?
Yeah.
Sorry, I kind of ran out of steam there. We've been potting for 20 minutes. I'm kind of past my pod limit.
Yes, I get it.
Guy. Like, can you believe this freaking guy?
Believe
this millennial?
He's got a take count. It's like if he's got like 6.
He's hit his take count. Can you believe this? Back in my day, we'd be doing takes until 7:00 tonight.
If he goes over 20 takes, like his throat starts to swell, like it's awful. He might tear his larynx. I've never said that word. Larynx.
There it is.
Gen X podcasters like Carig are taught to, save their bullets. Like last week, where he didn't talk for the first 15 minutes. It was great. Maybe that was 2 weeks ago.
Unbelievable. That's 2 weeks ago, and I was in a bad mood. Anyway, like, look, here's the other thing about these debates. Since we're gonna let's do some more takes. I think what's also problematic about this, and this is no offense to poor George Kirby, but why are we comparing George Kirby to Bob Gibson, Curt Schilling, Roger Clemens? Like every argument that gets made, I'm just using that as an example, right? Like, we're always holding up these exemplars that these were freaks of nature.
Right.
Like you're
right,
talking about like literal freaks of nature.
Right.
Anybody that pitched 10 years in the major leagues is a freak of nature, right? And guess who comes out of the woodwork to dunk on poor George Kirby? Are all of these unicorns, as if like what they did was just typical. It's
Who was
not.
going after him? I saw that. I heard that there was a chorus, but like now that TweetDeck doesn't function for me, I really don't. I can't see what's
I
on
read
Twitter
a story
anymore.
that listed a bunch of dudes that like you would pretty much expect. Roger Clemens being one of them.
Goose
Oh,
Gossage.
okay.
I'm sure Goose is somewhere steaming.
Did anyone
it.
ask David Wells about him?
Oh man.
Okay, boomer.
Oh man, no, I don't think that's anything that came up in his wide-ranging comments about.
Congrats to David Wells for winning the 2023 Goose Gossage Award for guy who won't be invited back to Yankee camp.
Boy, seriously,
good grief.
That's his last old timers day, probably. Anyway,
like a dog bites man story. Anyway,
so go to the baseball cafeteria. You get to pick from a smorgasbord of like what you like about baseball. Your perfect aesthetic baseball game. Is it long guys going deep into games? Is it flame throwing closers? Is it power? Is it speed? That's like I think we've got enough time to just sort of like lay it on the line. What do you actually want if you could create a league?
I miss variety. I miss the fast guy leading off. I miss the contact guy hitting second. I miss like the big guys in the middle. I do. I remember this is how I learned the sport, right? This is how I learned the buckets of what kind of players you need to have on your club. I liked the fact that back in the day, it seemed like there was a bunch of varying skills, that you had a rabbit playing center field, not Adam Duvall. All right. Like that, and I look, does fine. But all I'm saying is like, we have just lost any element of that variety. And it's just stick him in there because they can like, draw a walk or pop a ball out of the park. We don't give a shit if they can field or not. Like
we're talking about Gold Glover Adam Duvall, right?
What did Adam Duvall do to you?
He's won a Gold Glove.
I know, but like, okay, we know what the Gold Gloves represent. A lot of times it's offense, but anyway, all right. But you could tell that you're using that group, Grant. Okay? So like, I know you've written those fucking words before. Don't even give me that look. Like you have definitely ripped on the Gold Gloves in there. You 100% have.
Rafael Palmeiro, baby. Anyone who knows Rafael Palmeiro's Gold Glove.
So, but like I miss that. You talk about ideal, what it looks like, how much fun is it when you get differences on the field. Like those Giants teams back in the day remind me of that, right? Like the same team that could have Kevin Mitchell and Jose Uribe on the same freaking lineup. And like they're both doing something useful for you. Or Brett Butler is in that lineup with Robbie Thompson, and they're doing something useful for you. It's just very different. All right. Will Clark, useful, very different from like these guys. But that's what I want. And now today, it is everyone trying for the same thing. And I think that's what gets taken out of it. Like where the game loses something is that they're all trying to do the same thing the same way, by and large. And I think that's kind of boring.
Do you think it's always going to be, the answer is going to be always like the baseball from your youth? So the youths of today in 20 years, are they going to be like, I miss like big hunky guys going for the dingers,
Probably. I think there's definitely that. And that's, again, we're talking about the cultural aspect of the sport. That's one of it, man. It's always better when you're a kid. Mm-hmm. Like, isn't it? Like, and I admit that freely. Like that, of course I'm biased by that. That's how I grew up watching it. And it's a good question, though. I wonder, like, I mean, you would think that it would be the same. Like the kids watching this now that fall in love with this sport, this is all they know.
But a counterpoint, though, is that basketball's like way better now. Like I watch a game from 19.
Is it?
Now.
I mean, just like I watch a game from 1980 on YouTube, and it's it's kind of a snooze. Like even like especially pre-Jordan, like Magic Johnson was different. That's why he was, the Showtime Lakers were. But it's different. I think basketball. The 3-pointer is maybe a little bit too much, but maybe I do miss a big old center like a Galoob, a 7'2" Galoob.
Yeah, come on, man. You love the idea of Greg Ostertag getting in the post, like backing someone down.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, I went to a friend of mine invited me to the Nets Cavs game this year at Barclays, and the game was like psychotic. Like they were just racing up and down the floor, jacking threes. I was like, is this what basketball looks like now? He's like, well, like these two teams specifically. I'm like, this is crazy. Like it was like watching Arena League football or something, you know? I don't know. I think that I I don't I think there's a variety in the game when it comes to hitting still. I think the problem is that I don't even know if there is a problem per se, like, but just I think that the pitching is so good that it has flattened some of that in that,
True.
you know, the mediocre hitters get chewed up and spit out in a way that, you know, that is just they don't put the ball in play. So there's just less excitement. I mean, you're talking about like what sort of baseball do you want to see? Like, I still think the product's pretty good. I just kind of wish that some of these incredible, you know, pitchers were trained just a little bit differently, you know, to maybe throw a little, you know, like not as hard or, you know, not as heavy on every breaking ball and to go deeper. But maybe that's just, you know, again, like mythologizing game 7 of the 2001 World Series, you know, like who knows?
I wonder, growing up, I remember if it was a 2-0 count, if someone dropped a curveball or a changeup in a 2-0 count, the announcers would comment on it like, whoa, there's a new science happening here. Wow, what's going on? That's a fastball count. And now every single pitcher can throw at least 3 different pitches confidently in a 3-0 count. It's just how it is now. And I think the pitchers are better. They're more skilled. They're more talented. But it's just like emblematic of how the game changes. And you can now have 12, 13-man staffs where you have guys who can throw harder than ever before, who can throw where they want generally, who can miss bats with all sorts of different pitches. And when you have that many guys, you're just going to get them in the game. It's different now. That was the dumbest point I've ever made.
Grant, we have breaking news. The Stearns thing is finally going through.
Is it really?
Yeah, Mets are going to hire him, be the president of baseball ops, in a move that no one saw coming last October. That'll be interesting, though, right? Mark, I'm sure you got some takes on that.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's going to be super fascinating. Obviously, Steve Cohen is focused on this guy and waited for him. Like he waited him out. Like, so I think this is obviously not surprising. This has been in the works for a long time. I'm always fascinated when somebody rises to the level where you're going to wait for him, that you're going to make some things happen to get him. I think that says a lot about like how he's viewed. I think there's good reason for that. Obviously, we know what David Stearns did in Milwaukee. You know, those guys were a perennial playoff contender, which is hard to do. I mean, there was a year where I think they cut $25 million from their budget, and it was already pretty thin. And they, you know, feel like they were right in the mix again the next year, despite that. And so, I think there's been some resourcefulness and creativity shown there. I think another thing that I've heard he's done well is manage up. All right. Like that's a big part of that job is like being able to manage up. And, you know, he's going to have a challenge there, right? Like this is Steve Cohen is going to have some demands. Like he wants things done a certain way. Obviously he thinks he's going to get that in David Stearns. So, guess we're going to find out, but, you know, I think whether it works out or not, obviously that's up to fate, but, you know, this is a really smart guy who, but it's not even just the baseball chops. Like he knows how to deal with people. I think that's a big deal too. So, no, I think it's a very good hire for them.
Yeah, the Brewers hired David Stearns in the fall of 2015, as anyone who followed Evan Drellick on Twitter back then can remember, because he tweeted about it every single day, like 5 times a day. Do you know how many times the Brewers had made the postseason before 2015?
Wait. Stop. Okay, they won a pennant in 82.
82.
That's it.
No, more than that.
Oh, wait, no, then the Sabathia year. 08. Okay. And then was there one more? 2 more?
2 more, yeah.
Was it in the 80s? And then let's see. Except for the one I just mentioned. They won a pennant in the 80s.
You get the Fielder years.
2 in the 80s.
2 in the 80s? When the hell did they do it? It must have been early.
The year before 82.
Oh,
in like in the strike season,
split
or not
season.
strike season, split season, yeah. And then in 2011.
Wow, I just like totally missed 11. I forgot all
Yeah,
about
but
that.
4 times, right? They made it four
Yeah,
times, and
they
obviously
started in 70.
we're in an era of expanded postseasons, but they've made the playoffs like I believe almost every year besides that, besides last year when Stern stepped down. So like clearly, right, the fellow is doing something right. Um, they built up a pretty they've won a lot of trades. They've had some success in the draft. They've done a pretty good job of like sort of building offense out of platoons and things like that. And now he's going to be given the keys to Steve Cohen's kingdom. Cohen talked all along, right? Said, we want to be the East Coast Dodgers. What did the Guggenheim Group do? 2 years into their reign, they brought in Andrew Friedman from Tampa Bay, small market maven. Billy Epler's going to stay on. It seems like, probably still is the general manager, but Stearns will be the decision maker. And it's kind of they're moving into this. They tried to do what the Dodgers did during that time, which was like shock and awe spending to get into contention. They didn't have the core of players the Dodgers had back then, and so it was less effective. But yeah, now we're gonna see how far like Cohen's money can go, I guess.
I would say that someone like Stearns, you're not necessarily going to see the changes on a transactional level. Like it's not,
correct.
You're not going to see the benefits. Like all of a sudden there's like, so, wow, they traded for Ronald Acuna Jr. and all they had to give up was Brett Beatty. Like that's not the kind of genius that they're looking for. It's going to be just behind the scenes organizationally. It's going to be the developmental side of things. That's what you're getting when you get someone from a small market like Andrew Friedman or Stearns. You're not getting him there because he's still going to be doing the owner says that he'll pay for Max Scherzer. I guess I'll sign him then. Like, okay, twist my arm.
Yeah.
Anyone can do that. It's underneath the floorboards is where you're going to really see the difference.
100%. I think that's, we talk about, sports executives a lot from the framework of the moves they've made that we can see. But I think so much of it from having covered the sport is that, it's also just sort of nitty gritty management, right? Like what kind of processes do you have in place when a decision is made? Do you have like good, smart people weighing in, or are you just like, throwing darts at a board? Like, what is it, right? Like, do people feel like they're empowered in an organization to make, help make decisions and have their voices heard and all these things? And, that's not like very like, sexy or things that you talk about, but those are the things that do lead to good moves that we do talk about, is all that nitty gritty stuff. And so I think this is a test for somebody who, he's coming into an organization where there's been a lot of change. It didn't change for a long time. Now there's been a ton of it. All right. Expectations have changed. The way they're viewed here has changed. There's a lot going on, and he's going to have to go through there and kind of see, like, all right, who of the folks who are here, are going to help with this next step, and where are the places where they've got to fix it? Where do they got to add some people or change the personnel? And I'm not even talking about the guys on the field yet. I'm talking about the people that are here trying to make decisions. I think there's a lot of stuff he's going to have to confront, and that's why you're seeing the timing of this hire now, right? Going into like right to the beginning of the offseason. That's when contracts are up, within like the parts of the organization, like development and all that. So I think that's where you're gonna start to see some changes in pretty short order, I think.
Yeah, and also just like upgrading, like starting to win on the margins of the 40-man roster, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, that was like one of the most, when Farhan Zaidi came into the Giants, right? Like that was kind of where he dedicated his time when Zaidi and Friedman took over the Dodgers. Like they didn't say like, oh, we need to get a number one starter. It's like, we need to clean up spots 25 through 40 on our 40-man. And then we need to, and I think that's one thing that the Mets have been kind of significantly lacking in this year is like quality depth. They had a lot of injuries, but they also were, running out sub replacement level players in a lot of those spots. And so the idea is that someone like Stearns will be able to work the margins and improve that. I mean, that's kind of what teams like the Brewers have to do, is that, they may not be, have the top level talent, but 1 through 26, they have competent players. Like the Rays, right? You think about the Rays. When was the last time the Rays put a bad baseball player on the field? Right? Like like everyone can do something of, kind of decent value so that another team can look at that player and be like, oh, we could use that guy, right? Like that's the sort of thing that the Mets, you're in part of what your hiring stands for. It's infrastructure, it's processes, it's all that stuff. It's kind of, you still have to like land the big free agents and get the best players. You don't want to get so deep into the process weeds that you become kind of what the Yankees have become. But if you're able to hold both sort of thoughts, right, that's how you create a juggernaut. The way like the Dodgers are. Like the Dodgers are going to win 100 games this year, and they're like totally screwed up.
Yep, that's amazing. It's amazing. He's right.
Like
It's
what I mean?
amazing. Like, oh my god!
And that's like some of it, as we've talked about ad nauseum. Some of it is having Mookie Betts and Freddie Freeman, but a lot of it is organizational DNA and roster churn and the way they manage their pitching and all that stuff. So
yeah, they made the right bets, man. Every time you sign somebody to a long-term deal, it's a massive bet. Dodgers made some pretty good ones there, and those two guys. And by the way, you talk about what the Mets are facing, and you mentioned the Rays. I mean, Robert Stevenson just kicked him down, right? Like, is another one like this, and now all of a sudden he's this monster coming out of their bullpen, missing bats, and he's walking fewer dudes, he's striking out more dudes, and what? Yeah. Because he changed uniforms and whatever they're like teaching those guys there took to him. So the Mets, that's the challenge that they're facing. Exactly right. They gotta start winning at the margins. I think it's also they've been long overdue for a good comprehensive look at all their systems. Like are they just established a pitching lab, and that's a big step, but also the Brewers did that how many years ago with Stearns, right? So like I think there are areas where they got to start figuring out where they're going to get ahead in certain places rather than just catching up, and that's what I'll be curious about too, is like what's the next frontier. What is the thing they're going to be the early adopters on, because I think that's also where if you look at where the resources could go, that Steve Cohen's money could be used really well. It's that finding the place that the season advantage before most others do.
Do you think there's a way to get the Mets interesting by next year? Do you think one off season can get this Mets back to where you care about them next September? I think so. Well, I mean, that's a question. I think that there's a way.
I don't, but I'm interested. Why? I'm curious, Grant. What makes you bullish on that?
Not necessarily bullish. It's just that they have, they have more talent than I think we give them credit for. Maybe they trade Pete Alonso, maybe they don't. But they've got Brandon Nimmo. They still got Senga. They've got pieces, and I get that Brett Beatty hasn't been all that just yet, but they have pieces. I'm just interested in them. I don't think Jeff McNeil is cooked just yet. He's only 31. Just stuff, just a few things here and there, and I wonder if there's a way to get them interesting a year from now.
What's that? Never. It was something like one manager leaves like a note in his desk, that says like "blame me" or something like that for the next manager to find. I was trying to figure out a way to make a joke about Chaim Bloom trading Mookie Betts and then the Mets trading Pete Alonso, but I don't know. I think trading Alonso would be interesting. I think it's something you really have to consider, and it would drive the fans bonkers. And I think that's a tough thing for a new fella being brought in to have to be the face of. But I think it's, from a baseball perspective, it makes a lot of sense to trade him.
I think that's a terrible point to bring up in minute 44 of a 45-minute podcast, because we could do a whole episode on.
Can't go beyond 45 minutes. What you raised in the Mariner system or something?
Oh my God!
I've got a minute count. Speaking of
Grant, I got great.
So George Kirby, I didn't mention this the whole time we were talking about George Kirby. Do you know the song Kirby by Aesop Rock?
No.
It's a song about his cat, so you definitely check it out. But it's got a hook, and it's hey Kirby, what you doing, Kirby? So every time I see George Kirby's name, I'm just going, George Kirby, what you doing? I had to get that out there. That's what you bring up 45 minutes into a podcast. What are you shaking your head, Mark? It's rap, it's hip hop. You too good for that?
I'm just saying, you're the first Gen Xer that wants to actually do more work by continuing to pod. That's like amazing. I didn't know that was within the rules for you guys. Anyway,
See, Mark, you know how I know that you're a Gen Xer, Mark? All millennials view Gen X as like they're like poser boomers, right? Like they act like, oh, I'm cool. Like Ethan Hawke taught me everything I know, but they act the same way the boomers do now because they've become that age, right? You're showing your ass by still being like, well, Gen X doesn't want to work. That's what I was always taught. It's like, yeah, because you were in Gen X and you grew up hearing that.
that's too much to unpack. I believe
I
you.
mean, in 20
Sure.
years, millennials
Just
will be the same way. We'll be like, oh no, like, it's all Olivia Rodrigo's fault or something. I don't know.
this has gone off the rails, man.
All right, this has been episode 65 of the Roundtable. We'll be back next week. We'll talk about baseball because that's what we do. Andy, go listen to Aesop Rock rap about his cat. It's a delightful song. The whole family knows it here. We all sing it in car rides. All right, we'll see you next week. Thanks for listening.